Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Wednesday Wisdom. My name is JB Hilliard, and these are short video snippets designed to answer questions you may have about estate planning or probate. And I'm sorry, I still have a slight frog in my throat. Or there may be other legal concerns that may be impacting your household. And for this week, we are continuing our case study of Sarah and her bakery and the business succession planning that she knows she needs to do. Now, I want to talk just briefly this week about why business succession planning even matters. Excuse me. So let's talk about Sarah and her bakery. Now, the bakery is doing very well, but she's not really sure at this point who would step in if something were to happen to her. So she thinks about her health, as we all do, especially as we get older, or as we hear certain creaks and knocks in our body that we didn't hear before, those funny sounds and noises that come from us moving a certain way and doing that sort of thing. So she thinks about her health, even though she's in pretty good healthy status right now. But what if she had an accident? I live in the metro Atlanta area, and there are, countless accidents on a daily basis, minute by minute. So you really never know what's going to happen once you leave the house. But she thinks about those things now even more so. Or what if she developed a condition that prevented her from being able to work in the bakery? So now she has those thoughts of who could or should take over the bakery. Now, if she didn't have a plan, her family might be left with the tough decision of selling the bakery because, quite frankly, her husband and children don't have the same passion about running a bakery and running the business as she does. And so there may be some disagreement as to, what to do with the business if she wasn't able to do it herself. Should we sell it? Should we keep it in the family as a legacy to her children or grandchildren? And then if we keep it, who's going to work it? And so those are always questions. If you're a business owner, either current or future business owner, these are questions you need to ask yourself sooner versus later. And if you don't have a plan, and let's get back to Sarah. If she doesn't have a plan in place, the business could lose value very quickly if she's not the one working it. And that wouldn't be beneficial to the ultimate people down the road, her children or grandchildren, who would benefit from it. If it were to sell, or if they did have to make the decision to sell it, then they wouldn't be getting the fullest value of the business if it's losing value because she's not there. Or worse yet, the business could just suddenly close, and then there's no income coming in at the present time to help with Sarah and her family and the household needs. So as Sarah starts to think about this, the next question is really, who is that person going to be? And so this takes a lot of thought for some people. And let me just give you an example that I had a few years back, where a potential client called and had some questions about estate planning. And she was elderly, and by elderly, I mean maybe late 70s, early 80s. And we had a good time on the phone and talked at least three different times via telephone. And at some point, I kept asking her, my requirement for my clients, if I'm doing the estate plan, is who's your primary person, and then who's your backup person. And then I typically ask for a second backup. So for the executor of her will, she didn't have, according to her, she didn't have any family members that she could trust. Now, I don't know if those were close family members from a genealogical perspective, or if they were close in proximity from a geographical perspective, or not, but she did not want to list any family member and didn't have any friends. Of course, she's already retired, so she didn't have any coworkers. And so she literally asked me to serve, if she could list me as her executor. Sight unseen. We had never met in person. We had only talked on the phone for a handful of times, and she wanted to list me as her executor. So I explained my hesitation for that, because that's not my role, and particularly a conflict if I'm drafting the document. So if you have an attorney that drafts your documents and puts his or her name in there as an agent or executor, that's a big no-no, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, I share that to say this is a decision that's not necessarily a quick decision to make. You need to really think about who it is you could trust in this role, because it's not just a sign on a dotted line and I'm done kind of role. It requires some work. It requires some knowledge of administration, financial knowledge, of keeping track, mathematical ability, reading ability, and that sort of thing. So Sarah has to think about these things. You have to think about these things too. Not even necessarily as it relates to a business, but just estate planning generally. You need to know who your persons, your fiduciary people are going to be in your estate plan. But for businesses, it's particularly important to consider who it is that could or should continue to run those business operations. So these are serious considerations that you need to take the time to fully flesh out, but it does need to be done. And so this is where Sarah is at this point of her journey. And I've talked enough, so we'll continue this discussion next time. But as always, I thank you for watching, and we'll see you then.